All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving right into a really fascinating text called Guru Nirnaya Dipika, which you could translate as the scriptural decision on who can become guru. It tackles a huge question for a lot of spiritual seekers. What are the precise, scripturally defined qualifications for a genuine spiritual master? And let me tell you, this text offers a very specific, and for many people, a very challenging answer. So the book kicks off by acknowledging a problem that feels very modern, right? You've got so many spiritual teachers and leaders out there. In a world with so many voices, how can a sincere person figure out who's the real deal? Who actually has the authority to guide you on the path to liberation? This is the central question the author sets out to answer, not with his own opinion, but by digging into the scriptures for evidence.
And wow, this analogy, used right at the start of the book, basically sums up the entire premise. It's saying that choosing a spiritual guide is not some casual decision. It's presented as a matter of spiritual life and death. You know, just like you would never drink water without being sure it's properly filtered, the text argues you shouldn't accept spiritual guidance without that same level of rigorous, scripturally based checking.
Okay, so let's jump into the first major section here, the scriptural decision. This is where the book really lays the foundation for its whole argument, and it starts, as you might expect, by getting super clear on its terms.
First things first, the basics. The text breaks down the actual word guru from its Sanskrit roots. Gu, it says, means darkness or ignorance, and ru means the remover of that darkness. So put them together, and the fundamental job of a guru is to remove that darkness of ignorance with the light of knowledge. It's a pretty profound responsibility when you think about it that way.
Now, this next point is absolutely crucial to understanding the entire book. The text makes a critical distinction between two kinds of gurus. On the one hand, you have the Siksha guru, the instructing master. This can be anyone with deep spiritual knowledge who offers guidance. But then you have the Diksha guru, the initiating master. And this, the book says, is a whole different ballgame. This is the one who gives formal mantra initiation and, get this, takes direct responsibility for the disciple's soul. As you can imagine, the qualifications for that role are way stricter.
And that distinction leads us right to the core thesis, the main event of Guru Nirnaya Dipika. The author states, pretty bluntly, that the role of an initiating Diksha guru is reserved exclusively for a person born into a traditional Brahmin family who also meets a bunch of other rigorous qualifications. This right here is the central and, yeah, often the most debated point of the whole text.
All right, next up, a question of birth. To support that huge claim, the text focuses squarely on the spiritual importance of one's birth.
This quote, which the book cites, is really key to getting your head around the argument. The commentary makes this very fine distinction. It says, hey, if a person from any background develops these saintly Brahmanical qualities, you should absolutely respect them, as if they were a Brahmin. But, and this is a massive but in the author's argument, that respect doesn't give them the actual title or the right to perform the specific duties reserved for a born Brahmin, like being an initiating guru.
So what does it actually mean to be a qualified Brahmin according to this text? Well, the author breaks it down into clear stages. First, you're a Brahmana by birth. Then, after you go through the sacred thread ceremony, you become a Dvija, which means twice born. And finally, through really deep study of the scriptures, you become a Vipra, or a wise person. The point is, you have to hit all three of these milestones to be considered qualified for these sacred rites. And just to really drive the point home, the book pulls out direct quotes like this one from the Sutrarova. The text uses statements like this to argue that the role of an acharya, a spiritual master who teaches by their own example, is fundamentally locked into one's family lineage.
Okay, on to part 3, answering the critics. Now this is interesting because the author totally anticipates the major counterarguments and decides to meet them head-on.
And this is probably the biggest challenge, the one that comes up most often against the book's thesis. It's the idea that, hey, doesn't true qualification come from your knowledge and your spiritual realization, not from your family tree? And this famous verse? This is Exhibit A for that counterargument. I mean, it seems to state pretty clearly that if you know the science of the divine, you can be a guru, no matter what your social standing or birth is. So, how does the author possibly reconcile this?
Well, the book's entire rebuttal hangs on that distinction we talked about earlier. The author argues that this verse, which he notes is from a Bengali text, is referring to a Siksha guru, an instructing teacher. He maintains that for the role of the Diksha guru, the initiating master, you still have to follow the rules laid out in the original Sanskrit scriptures, which he presents as the higher, ultimate authority.
So, what about the next big objection? This one focuses on the incredible power of devotional practice.
The argument goes something like this. If you engage in sincere spiritual acts like chanting, doesn't that have the power to purify anyone to the level of a Brahmin and therefore make them qualified? The author answers this with a really nuanced commentary from Sripad Madhvacharya. The interpretation is that, yes, purification through devotion is real, and it makes a person worthy of respect. It even qualifies them to assist in sacred rites. But, and here's the crucial part, it does not grant them the authority to conduct those rites themselves. It's that same distinction all over again, earning respect versus being qualified for a specific function.
And this commentary from Srila Jiva Goswami, also cited in the book, really reinforces that same point. It suggests that while purification through devotion in this life is real and powerful, the specific qualification to perform Vedic rites is a type of karmic result that you have to get by being born into a Brahmin family in your next life.
And that brings us to our final section, the path of the disciple. If the guru's role is defined this strictly, what's expected from the person who's following?
And the text does not mince words about the consequences of breaking these rules. It quotes scriptures saying that if you accept initiation from a guru who isn't qualified by birth, both of you, the guide and the follower, are going to face some pretty severe spiritual repercussions. The stakes are presented as being about as high as they can get.
So for the follower, the path laid out is one of total surrender and respect. The duties are crystal clear. You offer your body, your money, and your respects to the guru. You follow the guru's instructions without changing a thing. You should never disrespect the guru or even think of him as just an ordinary person. And you glorify the guru publicly, but you keep the secret mantras you've been given completely confidential.
This quote right here powerfully shows the supreme importance placed on the guru in this system. The guru is seen as the ultimate protector, someone who can even shield a disciple from the Lord's anger. But if the guru becomes angry with you, the text says you have no other shelter, nowhere else to turn. It really underscores the weight of that relationship.
So, Guru Nirnaya Dipika presents this very clear, very rigid, and very scripturally based framework for spiritual authority, one that's centered on lineage and birthright. And it really raises a fascinating and, let's be honest, a challenging question for us today. In a world that so often values merit and personal realization over inherited status, how do we engage with ancient traditions that define authority in such a profoundly different way? What does it mean to be a follower, and what does it mean to be a guide? It's definitely something worth thinking about.